Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. Here we discuss your favorite movies of all time, as well as the ones that got away. We look at classic and iconic films from two perspectives, that of the diehard fan, and that of the uncultured who's never seen it before until now. We're your hosts, Joe and Justin, here to act as your guides, playing part as both the fellow enthusiast and the ignorant and uncultured.
Ooh.
Today, we'll be ruining ourselves and breaking our hearts and loving the wrong people and dying. It's 1987's Moonstruck.
Who dies?
No one dies.
No one dies.
That's the best part about this. It's all about passions and extremes.
It's true. You're absolutely right. This movie was bonkers, Joe.
This movie is an opera set as a romantic comedy.
I mean, how in the hell did this movie win 3 Oscars?
It was nominated for 6 Oscars.
And nominated
Hell
for 6?
Yeah, coolest Oscar wins of all time.
These are insane. Surely they were okay. I'm not going to straight out call this movie a bad movie. That's not what I'm here to do.
Oh,
and that's
Justin, we are about to disagree heavily on
that's
this
not
episode.
that's not what we do on this podcast. But man, this movie is weird. Like Nick Cage going full Nick Cage before that was even like a verb.
I have in my notes that the Nick Cage introductory scene is maybe one of the greatest moments in all of film. When they find him in the bakery and he has a whole monologue about his hand being cut off.
And then like it plays into the plot zero amount the rest of the time.
This whole movie, I'll make you describe the plot in a little bit, but like this whole movie is about people either examining or being completely overwhelmed by and driven by lust versus love.
Right.
Like the inhibitions are out the door in this movie. People are pawns in the
The
glow of
universe.
the moon.
Yeah. That's right. The moon is controlling everybody and everything. That is the central character right there. The moon is the protagonist and the antagonist that moves our characters along.
So, Justin, you had never seen 1987's Moonstruck. We are watching it as part of the final part in our Oscars miniseries, Oscars
Correct.
April. We are coining that term. This movie, I'll kind of get into the stats in a bit, but like this movie won 3 Oscars. Can you tell me which ones? Did you look any of this up?
It was Best Actress,
Got it.
Best Supporting Actress,
Nailed it.
and the third I don't know.
It's our favorite. It's screenplay. We're
Screenplay.
talking about 2 screenplay winners in a row. Social Network and
Wow.
Moonstruck.
Wow.
So Social Network, the way they do it at the Oscars is they split screenplay up into original and adapted. So adapted will be stuff that's like
Based on a
off of
book.
based off of, it's a sequel, it's based off of another movie or something like that. And it's the original ones are obviously like original screenplays that people come up with. And so this is an original screenplay when Social Network was an adapted one,
Right.
because it was based off of a book that was written around the same time.
Yep. That's really cool. But man, what a story.
What a story.
So the way that we approached this movie
Yeah.
was just purely obviously by the moon's intentions. The universe was toying with us. You had a different movie in mind, already slated on the calendar that we were going to watch and we were going to talk about. What was it? Was it Lady Bird?
Yes, so I was going to have you watch Lady Bird because we would have then been able to talk about kind of the Allison Janney versus Laurie Metcalf of it all back in 2017. Was
Right.
that it? So basically, Lady Bird, which you haven't seen and which we can maybe save for a later date at this point, was directed by Greta Gerwig, and it was actually her first Oscar nomination for Best Director. It was a
Oh.
big deal because even up until that point, women didn't usually get nominated for Best Director. And there had only been one woman Best Director winner at that point. So big deal for her because it was one of her first films. And the conversation around Lady Bird was also Saoirse Ronan, who you know from movies like Atonement,
Lovely Bones.
The Lovely Bones, Little Women, all that. So she's really big in the Oscar scene. That would have been like her third or fourth Oscar nomination at that point. Like she's She's definitely been there a few times, but then almost the bigger the bigger conversation there was Laurie Metcalf, who goes as far back as like the Roseanne show, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever watched that.
I did.
So that was actually her first Oscar nomination for playing the Saoirse Ronan character's mom. But it was also the year that I, Tonya came out. So Margot Robbie and I, Tonya was going up against Saoirse. Allison Janney and I, Tonya was kind of this unstoppable powerhouse that was going up against Laurie Metcalf, and she ended up actually winning.
And wow, like what that would have been amazing to do Lady Bird and Greta Gerwig of it all, and
Just
especially with Barbie, the
we
Barbie
could have
movie
had
coming
such
out.
a Barbie talk. I am so glad though that we shifted to Moonstruck. It was just like I think it was just a stray text that happened where like somehow we gathered that you had never seen Moonstruck.
It was in an episode when we were talking about in March when we were doing musical March. We were talking about what movie were we talking about? The one that was my pick. Oh, Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah, and it had to do with my beverage where I had to slap cilantro, and I had to tell my cilantro to snap out of it.
Snap out of it.
But okay, so this is the rounding part of the story, right? Like that's my only touch point, and was my only touch point to this movie.
Really, snap out of it.
But it's not even from the movie. It's RuPaul ripping it off and copying it and doing it ad nauseum, throughout her career and RuPaul's Drag Race, and that's all I knew about it.
So you gotta. I am the uncultured one here. I've never actually seen RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, in what context does "snap out of it" come into play? Is it just like a thing that they throw out all the time as like a catchphrase?
It comes out a bunch in like silly, over the top acting challenges and stuff. Sometimes someone is going to portray a Cher like character, and Ru just loves Moonstruck for some reason. And obviously, just everybody loves Cher. They've done a Cher Rusical before, and it's all just based around Cher music, kind of stuff like that. And a big famous thing that they do each season on RuPaul's Drag Race is a game show is called the Snatch Game,
right?
Based on Match Game.
Snatch is them like doing lip syncing, or is that different?
That's different. Snatch is referring to the vagina of it
like
all.
She's snatched,
and that too. But yeah, so every contestant comes in as a famous celebrity that they're going to impersonate and play the match game with, comedians or whatever. And then a coveted role that most people usually fail at, but some do really good at, is trying to do Cher. Like, it is a good, drag queen, high level, upper echelon achievement if you can really nail a good Cher impersonation. But yeah, that's my only touch point to this movie, is just the reference to snap out of it.
So my touch point to your touch point is, have you ever, so this is kind of related to RuPaul's Drag Race because I think they were both on that. Have you ever seen like Trixie and Katya on YouTube doing,
Yes.
So those are two drag queens that I believe were on Drag Race, but they have kind of their own separate YouTube show. And I watch clips from that all the time. And Trixie, there's clips where Trixie has a bit where like she plays homophobic Cher. With basically just she's doing the Cher voice, but she's saying the most insane things. Like, what do you mean you got a girlfriend? And all that. That is my only touch point, but I die every single time.
Okay, Joe, what we're going to do a little side quest. Maybe we'll do a uncultured television universe. We'll watch The West Wing together.
Oh my
we'll
God.
watch RuPaul's Drag Race together. And we'll
Wait,
just
have you not seen The West Wing?
Of course not.
Oh my God, Justin.
So
That's
it's all
gonna
coming
be big. That was a big pandemic watch for me.
Yeah, it's all coming together. But yeah, so like I brought that up in the Little Shop of Horrors episode of like, I've never seen Moonstruck, and I think we touched on it barely, but it came up later, like you said, in a stray text of like, Joe, I've never seen Moonstruck. Was it ever like nominated? And you're like, was it ever nominated? Holy shit, we're gonna do that instead.
This is fun because I'm glad we got to do it instead of Lady Bird because Moonstruck was not only nominated, it won a lot of top categories, whereas I don't think Lady Bird actually won anything. It was more just like fun to talk about the nominations.
Hmm.
But Moonstruck, like you mentioned, won for Best Actress for Cher, Best Supporting Actress for Olympia Dukakis playing her mother, and then Best Original Screenplay for his name is John Patrick Shanley. Yes. So it's the same guy who he's written like a million plays, I think, which you can see kind of like in the thread of this movie. It's a lot of like one-on-one scenes and stuff like that, things that are taking
Yeah.
places in rooms. Not a lot of people are like running around.
Yeah.
But he wrote the play Doubt. Have you ever heard of that? They had a movie with like Meryl
Meryl
Streep,
Streep. Yeah.
Amy
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Adams.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he was nominated for a bunch of stuff for that too. But in addition to this, I'm basically just giving you all the stats for this
Why
one and
not? Just
saving
do
that
it.
later. The other nominations that Moonstruck got were for Best Picture, killing it, which was an even bigger deal back then because they only had 5 nominees for Best Picture up until around 2009, I
Hmm.
think. The Avatar year was when they switched over to 10 nominees, which is what they have now.
That's such an insane jump to go from 5 to 10.
Well, you know what the story is there.
No.
It's actually kind of interesting because there was a movie that came out that a lot of people think is what drove this switch. Is there's a movie that came out in 2008 that wasn't nominated for Best Picture, even though it was like groundbreaking in the culture. It was huge. Everyone was talking about it and it got these like raving reviews. And that movie was The Dark Knight. Nominated for a ton of technical awards, obviously wins for Heath Ledger's
And
performance,
yeah.
but didn't get the picture slot. And so that's when people are like, we kind of need to expand this Best Picture field. We're making so many more movies these days than we were making back in the 60s and 70s.
That's
There's so
fair.
many more genres at play. There's so many more things that need to be celebrated. And so we've done 10 nominees for Best Picture ever since then, starting with the Avatar Hurt Locker year, which was the big conversation.
I mean, I wish they would have gone, at least like 7, maybe 8. But no, they just said, what, fuck it, double it, whatever. The very next year. That's insane.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
so, Joe, can I just commend you for a second? Like the buildup you gave me of like it had to do with this little movie that like made a big splash.
I was almost gonna make you guess it.
Oh man, it was
Yeah,
so good.
I was like, this is too much of a tangent.
But I thought for sure it would have been nominated, but nonetheless.
Well, I mean, superhero movie, kind of hard to break through, um, but people think it was particularly with that one rather deserving. But it's so funny because like the very next year they open it up to 10 uh, pictures coming into that category, and you get the Hurt Locker, you get Avatar. I think that was like the year of Up as well, but then also like The Blind Side gets nominated for Best Picture, which is a little bit of a cringe rewatch. So I don't know. There's ups and downs to opening it up.
Yeah.
So Moonstruck gets a Best Picture nomination. It doesn't win. I wonder actually what did win Best Picture that year. Hold on.
So I got to say, I did do a little bit of digging, and this will come up. You'll see later in the video portion of the end game thing that we play. I was looking up Cher's nomination announcement or whatever for Best Actress, and she was up against Glenn Close for Fatal Attraction. I was like, oh my God. In my opinion, that's a way better performance. Comparatively, it's not even apples to apples.
Justin, you can go straight to hell. We are going to argue so hard on this episode.
I'm not shitting on the movie. Like, I had fun with it, but once we figured out that, like, once you said this movie is so funny, and we're like, oh, maybe it's not supposed to be taken so seriously because
This movie is absolutely a comedy.
everyone's playing it maybe a little too serious on the upfront, and like, should we be laughing this much? I don't know.
I mean, there's dramatic moments, especially with like the Rose's storyline, the mom, but like Cher and Nicolas Cage are doing insane shit in this movie. Like you're
Like,
absolutely supposed to be laughing.
so, and also, so like another thing that I didn't know until you posted the fucking story on Instagram of a screen grab of Cher and Nicolas Cage. I was like, Nick Cage is in this movie. Oh my God, what
Okay.
in the world is going to happen?
So let's approach it this way. Tell me about your history with Cher, if any, versus your history with Nick Cage, because this is kind of a coming together of those two worlds.
It is. So they come together in this film in 1987, the year of my birth. I know. I know, right? Um,
Everyone knows how old Justin is now. They'll
do the
never
math.
know how old I am.
That's right. They never will, unless they listen back several episodes where
We've
actually I
said it
think we talk about
multiple
it.
times.
We have. Okay, so Cher, um, I knew that she had done film. She done, obviously famous for her music more so. I remember like infomercials, like in middle school or whatever, of like Cher's greatest hits or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, Sonny and Cher, I already knew who that was, and it was parodied to hell and back through a bunch of like kids cartoon shows and whatever else. It was in the zeitgeist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was just fair game. So I kind of knew who Cher was. I didn't know her, professional acting kind of career. I stumbled upon it one day on cable, network cable or whatever. I thought I was watching, or I was going to tune in and watch the movie The Mask with Jim Carrey, because I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna
You're
get my
like, this
Jim
isn't
Carrey
as
thing,
funny as The Mask.
and I turn into Mask, which she's in, and is that Eric Stoltz or whoever? I don't
It's
remember.
Eric Stoltz, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, hang on, this isn't The Mask. This is okay. Wait a minute. And it's the
This
lady
is
from the late night infomercial. Yeah, this is so different. So that's my touch point really for Cher. And then, as getting more immersed and familiar with just like gay culture and drag queen culture and all this kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that like Cher just permeates and lives and breathes in that space. Um,
Definitely more of an energy these days, more of just a vibe.
Definitely. Yeah. But yeah, still doing things, still kicking, still doing strong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so the Nick Cage of it all. Obviously, I came to know him more from his more wackier roles. Face Off, that was one of my earliest memories. I never saw Raising Arizona, but like
Mm-hmm.
I can picture what he looks like, and it's very similar to what he looks like in this movie. Still tall, scrawny, but he has like weird hair and like a scraggly beard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I dig his unhinged, unpredictable, overacting, chew the scenery kind of stuff. Most recently, I think it was from 2017 or 2016. I can't remember, but it's a horror movie called Mandy.
Oh yeah.
Um, it fucking rules if you like weird, off the wall, insane
He's
horror
he's
movies.
kind of having a little bit of a resurgence these
He
days.
is. He's
Like
doing a
he's
renaissance of sorts, living in that space. There's another one that I need to watch. I've been meaning to, but it's like I think it's Out of Color and Time or something like that. Out of
color out
Color
of
and
space.
Space. Yeah. And that one's also supposed to be like a Lovecraftian
Yeah.
bonkers type of movie. And so he's really leaning into that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I have a good time with him. I enjoyed the National Treasure trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
They're always fun. But as soon as I saw that screen grab on our stories that you posted, and that he gets top billing from this movie, I was like, oh, he's going to be the love interest. Well, buckle up. This is going to be weird.
Yeah, so I actually didn't see this movie for the first time until like after college. I was living here in Atlanta, so it's a relatively new one for it to be like part of my culture, as they say. But it's become such a weird comfort watch to me, and I can't fully remember what I thought the story was going into this. I think for some reason I thought like Cher and her family like ran a restaurant or something like that, and it had something to do with that. So what I guess like going into Moonstruck, not even knowing like Nick Cage was in it, like what did you think the story was going to be? Like just having seen like the poster.
I had no idea. I didn't even know what the poster looked like, what the logo looked like, which is really clever, by the way. I really, the only thing, like I said, I knew is that she's smacking somebody and saying, snap out of it. So I was like,
This could have
okay,
been like a
maybe
legal crime drama for all you know.
it's like maybe her last name is Moon, and she goes around striking people. I was hoping there was going to be more smacking throughout the film.
Her name is Cher Moon.
Cher Moon, and you need to snap out like that's her, her catchphrase, and she just goes around
Cher
smacking.
Moon, private eye.
So that's kind of. I was like, that'd be hilarious if that's what it was.
You've been struck.
You just got struck by the law.
Moonstruck.
Yeah, so that's I had no idea what it was going to be.
That's fantastic.
Then the film kicks up. It starts. I tried to like avert my eyes like on the Amazon rent screen of like the description,
Yeah, they'll tell you a lot there.
and I didn't want to spoil myself, so I didn't look at that. But the film kicks on, and it's That's Amore, and I was like, okay, it's Italian, maybe. And oh man,
somewhere.
we're getting somewhere, and it is an Italian American movie through and through, right?
Yeah.
I saw an article that like Moonstruck is the best movie about Italian Americans that isn't about mobsters.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. People think that this is like such a great movie about New York as well, just like in a place in New York that isn't as often explored. Like a lot of New York movies take place in like Manhattan or Upper East Side, and I think this is more kind of in like the Bronx, Queens area.
Yeah, the little Italies of it all, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I had in my notes, I think one of the things that's so comforting to me about this movie, it's like I was thinking while watching this and kind of watching these people going in and out of houses in New York and kind of walking on the streets and talking, I was like, this feels like it takes place in another world, in another time. Like it feels like it's out of a universe. But there's also like such a tactile nature to the film. I was thinking like they're using like these phones. She's a bookkeeper. She does taxes for people, but she's kind of just writing everything down on paper all the time. They're walking everywhere. They're taking cabs and stuff. And ultimately, like I realized I was just feeling nostalgic for, the literal 80s.
Yeah.
And there just like wasn't maybe as much cell phones or internet. And that's literally it. And it feels like a fantasy world for me.
That's funny because I had a similar kind of thought. So jumping ahead, so like we get to the scene where they go to the opera, and she's going there to meet him. She's lived in New York her whole life, and she's like, "Where's the Met?" Ridiculous. Like you should know where the Met. You should know where it is.
It's so great.
She gets out of the cab and she's looking stunning, drop dead gorgeous. And then they're just kind of like she's stumbling around through the crowd, and he's just like waiting by the fountains. And I was like, what did we do before cell phones of like, hey, where are you? I'll be there in 5 minutes. That kind of thing. You just kind of had to just guess and hope that you run into the person that you're going to meet at the time you said.
You bring up a good point though. This movie joins the lore of House Bunny and Freaky Friday as like a secret makeover movie.
It is, yeah.
Like a makeover happens in the middle of it.
I wish they would have. I was waiting for the 80s thing. I was waiting for a montage. I was waiting for a song or something in there, but they bing bang boom it pretty quick.
I think Working Girl kind of came out around that same time and was that movie.
Okay, so they were like, we can't do that again.
Well, I think that's probably after. That's like 88 or 89. But like, for fans of that sort of 80s movie, you have Working Girl, and this is more just like not Working Girl, but like walking Cher,
Yeah, it's
like she's
Cher
just walking around the streets in a trench coat.
Yeah, but just looking fabulous.
Oh, she looks so good in this movie.
I thought they were gonna give her like the Cher hairdo because like they have her hair straight and they're cutting it, and then she walks out with like the craziest perm, big updo in the world.
It's insane.
Yeah,
her hair
is
in this movie
huge.
Her hair in this movie is like the secret third build actor. Is Cher's hair.
It's so good.
Covering, let me cover the rest of the Oscar nominations for this film. So we had Best Picture. This movie also got nominated for Best Director for Norman Jewison, who the only other thing that I know that he directed, he's directed a million things, but he directed Fiddler on the Roof back in the 70s.
Okay.
Did you ever get a chance to see that?
I didn't, but I'm familiar.
That's another fun one that you should
cool.
check out.
Yeah.
It's like it's an epic that I think is during early 1900s, but it's the Tevye character, and it's a musical, and it's super fun to watch.
There is literally a fiddler on a roof at one point.
There is literally a fiddler on the roof at the
Good,
at the very end.
good. I love it.
It's super fun. Best actress, Cher wins. Best supporting actress, Olympia Dukakis wins. We don't give Olympia Dukakis enough credit for having the most amazing name in all of Hollywood.
It's so good. Is that her given name?
I believe so. Let me check what Wikipedia says. Yes,
Oh my
yes.
God, that's great.
Born Olympia Dukakis in Massachusetts. Wow.
Yeah, she shows up to Hollywood and they're like, "Hey, so we're at the point where, this is Hollywood. You can change your name if you want. Do you want to change your name?" She's like, "Fuck no. My name is awesome.
Do you see my name? Are you kidding me?
Look at all these vowels. Look at
His
this."
name's gonna be in big lights. This wins Best Screenplay, John Patrick Shanley, and then the last nomination it gets, excuse me, is Best Supporting Actor for our good friend Vincent Gardenia, who was Mr. Mushnik in Little Shop of Horror.
Yeah. Okay.
Connections, baby.
Absolutely full on connections for sure. That's right. You brought that up in that episode. You're like, that's funny because the dad is, or, Mr. Mushnik is the dad from Moonstruck. And I was like, I've never seen Moonstruck. And you're like, get the fuck out of here.
That was it. That was
Yeah.
probably it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we talked about it later. But yeah, so he and Olympia Dukakis have such an interesting storyline going on. It's very, what's the Christmas movie?
Oh, Love Actually.
Yeah, it's got tinges of that.
Yeah. There's
You know?
people kind of just walking around, bumping into each other and affecting people's lives and stuff.
Yeah, and just like, cheating on each other with impunity. It's just insane. But that story, okay, so this is where it loses me because not even loses me, but it's just like, I wish there were a little bit more things turned up and turned down, or I wish they could have focused on one aspect versus another.
Yeah.
So like the serious nature of what's going on, sure, it gets played for laughs at the last scene of like, with when Johnny and Ronnie finally face off against each other, and it's like, I'm marrying her, but I'm not going to marry her because mom's not dead. All this kind of stuff, like ha ha ha. But
Almost everyone in this movie is physically or emotionally cheating on someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and not to the extreme of that movie with Jude Law and Natalie Portman, Closer. Not to that extreme.
I've never seen that one.
That movie is heartbreakingly in deep in that of just people just ruining each other's lives.
Very cheaty. Yeah.
Very cheaty, very hurty, that kind of stuff. Not to that extreme, but like, let's take stock of what's actually going on here. Not, Olympia Dukakis saying to Mr. Mushnik, I want you to stop seeing her and go to confessional. Ha ha ha. There's some big stuff going on here. Big things that are moving. As soon as Cher meets Nick Cage, they bang on his bed. Like, and she's just like, whatever, take me to bed. I don't care. I don't care anymore.
This movie uses obviously the full moon as kind of like a plot device for like people kind of be crazy with the full moon, but it's honestly about like when your passion overtakes you, like which direction you're gonna go. And so you get like Cher and Nicolas Cage who can't keep their hands off of each other. They have duties to other directions, but they can't resist, the physical attraction that they have for each other.
What is Nick Cage's duty to? Like the bread oven? Like
his brother. He can't sleep with his brother's fiance.
But he does it anyway. I'm gonna take you to bed.
You come from my brother Ronnie. Johnny. Oh my God. We gotta unpack that whole scene. But and then you have Cher's dad, who's maybe kind of a little sleazier with it. His storyline's where it gets kind of icky because like he's just straight up cheating on his wife, his loyal wife,
Yeah.
And that's kind of like an ongoing thing. It's not really a passion thing. It's more just like he seems bored, and the wife gets to the bottom of it, and she's like, "It's because you're just afraid to die. You're trying to hang on to your youth as much as you can."
And that's such a profound like. realization, like at the end of the movie, especially when Johnny comes back and she's just not interrogating him on the couch, but she's just like, why do men chase women? And then he eventually lands on, because maybe they're afraid to die. And it's like, that's amazing. Like, that's so profound and stuff like that. But it kind of gets lost amidst the kookiness for me, and just Nick Cage's face. Yeah.
He's got a crazy little rat face in this. But
So,
like the scene on the couch with Johnny, if you watch Olympia Dukakis's Oscar win, that's actually the scene that they use. Like when they play the montage of like everyone who was nominated, that's her scene, her clip that they use.
Every scene that she's in, she is the straight man. Everyone else is this not even heightened character, but they're just going through crazy things. She meets up with that professor at the restaurant who's like clearly problematic, dating children, teenagers, barely young adults in college that he's teaching, like predatory for sure. And, like her husband who's, crazy, running off with this other woman, and her daughter and all this stuff. Like, it's all like elevated outside of kind of like her very real bubble. So every scene she's in, she anchors it and with, the realness, reality. And, I kind of wish that they would have maybe dug into a little bit more of the, I don't know, more of that realness to it, a little bit more of the consequences of like real life consequences that would have happened of, I don't know.
It's all very heightened. And they careen towards a happy ending that everyone just kind of rolls over each other in. But Rose, the mom storyline, is actually more my favorite, just because of what you're saying. Like, she's aware of everything that's happening around her, and then she has dinner alone and is eventually invites the
sleazy professor
guy over to eat with her, and she kind of knows that she has the opportunity to kind of join in on the passion.
The rest of the cast,
But she is the one that's actually able to kind of step back and recognize all this for what it is. And she's I love the way that ultimately ends, is like she recognizes that like she could feel something else for other people and kind of act on her own passions, but she's also has like a duty and a direction with her own marriage that she feels loyal to.
The line that she says is brilliant. As they get to her house, the professor walks her home, and he's like, "Aren't you going to invite me inside? I bet, there's nobody," or, something like that. "There's nobody home." And she's like, "Yeah, no one's home, but I'm not going to invite you inside. Like, I'm too old for you." And he's like, "I'm too old for me." She's like, "No, I'm not going to do that because I know who I am."
Yeah.
Everyone else has no idea who they are.
Yeah. No. It's like you're saying, she's the rock, she's the straight guy in all of this, and she is able to recognize everyone else acting on their childish impulses, and she's able to kind of turn in another direction against her own.
Yeah, she is the voice of reason. It's great. It's
wonderful. So good. Such a resounding win for her. I'm so glad. Well, I have some more thoughts, but we always get too far in without actually doing the details. Let me just round off some film stats here, and then we can get into like trailer and plot description. So, okay. Moonstruck, released in December 1987. What a Christmas movie! See it with the whole fam.
It really is.
Directed by Norman Jewison, starring Cher, Nicolas Cage, Vincent Gardenia, Olympia Dukakis, and Danny Aiello. Made $102 million against a budget of $15 million. This was very, very
low
nice
budget, very
involved.
Low. Yeah,
and then nominated for the 6 Oscars that we've been discussing. So Justin, before we get too far, let's kind of knock out the trailer and plot description. You want to pull that bad boy up, and we can kind of get transported back to 80s trailer magic.
I'll bring you back to the simpler times when I was born.
Oh, wow.
And we'll talk about it.
The moon brings the woman to the man. Capisci?
The moon is a little like love.
Will you marry me?
I will marry you. I will be your wife.
You love him, Loretta?
No.
Good. When you love him, they drive you crazy.
Sometimes.
Why are you marrying Johnny? He's a fool.
It makes you act a little crazy.
Where are you taking me?
To the bed.
Oh, God. Okay, I don't care. Take me to the bed.
Isn't it romantic?
You got a love bite on your neck. Your life's going down the toilet.
You'll have your eyes open for you, my friend.
I have my eyes open.
I'll say no more.
You haven't said anything. You ruined my life.
That's impossible. You ruined my life.
Look, it's Cosmo's moon.
Why do men chase women?
Nerves? I don't want to talk about it.
That moon. That crazy moon.
Now you talk.
I love you. What?
Snap out of it!
I'm confused.
They say there's nothing new under the sun.
Wait a minute.
But under the moon, that's another story.
Do you love him, Loretta?
Ma, I love him awful.
Oh, God, that's too bad.
Cher, Nicolas Cage, in a Norman Jewison film.
A la familia, eh?
Moonstruck.
Amazing.
That's such a good trailer.
Right?
You know, we see some good trailers and we see some bad trailers, but that's a great one.
That's a good trailer. Yeah. It's just leaning hard into the Italian overture, Musetta's waltz.
The passion, it feels like an opera.
It does.
Let me see you summarize the plot for this movie in a minute or less. Based off of that trailer. No.
Got it.
Hang on. Let me cue this up. You ready? You ready to summarize the plot for 1987's Moonstruck?
Starring Cher and Nicolas Cage.
Starring Cher and Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And your time starts now.
Moonstruck centers around Cher, and she is an Italian-American lady who's down on her luck. She was married before, but he died 2 years after, and she's just like, I'm over it. She's a bookkeeper for people around town. And then she's dating this guy, Johnny Campanelli or Capistrani, I don't remember. But she's not marrying him for love. She kind of likes him, but she's trying to change her luck. But the moon is at play, and it's causing everyone to go a little bit wacky. And then she runs into Nick Cage, which is his brother, and they fall in love. And you're like, no, don't do that. He has a wooden hand. Why would you do that? And he's crazy, obviously. They go to the opera, and her dad's cheating on her mom, and no one likes it. And her great grandpa or somebody is walking dogs, and he's real good with dogs. The moon, there's 2 full moons in a row.
10 seconds.
And she's like, I'm not going to marry this guy. I'm going to marry this guy. And everyone's like, hey, that's fine. No big deal. And that's Moonstruck, baby.
That's pretty great. I mean, you left out Olympia Dukakis entirely, but like, we'll forgive that.
Yeah.
I think you hit the story beats. It's very much just a movie about people getting swept away by their impulses and what they're going to do once they land on their feet.
Yeah, and like we said, the moon causing, blame it on the moon. This is before like astrology got real big.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Saturn was doing. I'm not even sure if it was the age of Aquarius or not. Probably.
They didn't even have all the planets back then. They all had to do all the zodiac signs based off of the moon. Everyone was the same zodiac sign.
Idiots.
All the moon. Okay, so we're in kind of Oscar discussion mode. We talked about The Social Network, and that movie was very heavy on the score for us, the editing, and obviously Sorkin's screenplay. I think this movie and the reason it's so like iconic and beloved for so many people, this movie lives and dies with that screenplay. So like we all the way back in our first episode with Devil Wears Prada, technically our third episode because we iconically have 2 unreleased episodes.
Iconically, but also like ironically.
Ironically, we talked about the monologues being so iconic in Devil Wears Prada and how like the performances shone through because of that script and because of the space they were able to be given. And then in Social Network, even then you get more like longer monologues, longer like Sorkin level dialogues, people walking and talking. I think this movie, from a screenplay perspective, what makes it so successful is kind of the snappier one-liners. It's a much more different sound to your ears, really. It's a much more different cadence. It's about like a few people in a room together and they're just bouncing stuff off of each other, right? They're bouncing feelings, they're bouncing words. and it's all a lot more like fast paced. And I think this movie finds a lot of success in that, and the performances that come out of it are in part due to that screenplay.
Yeah, so you mentioned it before. The who wrote the screenplay?
John Patrick Shanley.
So you said he had a history background with doing plays, correct? Right?
A lot of
And
plays.
so this feels okay. This feels kind of like a stage play in a way.
Yeah. You
people-
could easily imagine Moonstruck on Broadway or something like that.
Yeah, because and this is something that Ryan and I discussed of just like it is in the dialogue, right? And it feels not not supernatural, but like it doesn't feel natural in a way. It feels sort of forced in a sense, but like
It feels very written down.
it feels very written. It doesn't feel like something that like no one talks like that. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
no
heightened.
one it is very heightened and it feels like a stage play in that regard, which, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing against it, but like I would be interested and I'm sure it's sacrilege to even suggest, but like if you were to imagine an alternate reality where, someone was going to take a whack at rewriting or redoing this movie.
You can go straight to hell.
I'm losing all of my cred in the community. Totally fine. Like if it were written by Sorkin or I don't know why this popped in my head, like Diablo Cody.
Hell yeah! Like
if they
writer
wrote
of
the screenplay,
Juno.
yeah, if they wrote the screenplay, or more famously, I think of Jennifer's Body. That kind of thing. Hilarious, great. But like more modern, snappier, kind of more conversationalist kind of dialogue, and kind of either like I said, either leaning more into the comedy aspect or leaning more into the drama aspect.
It is. It's interesting that you bring up like a Sorkin and a Diablo Cody because they won Oscars not back to back, but within like 5 years of each other for screenplay. So obviously Sorkin wins for Social Network. Diablo Cody won for Juno.
Yep.
And it's got that same kind of like snappy dialogue, obviously like a heavily layered amount of quirkiness on the Juno side of things, but you can very easily see one of them translating a script like Moonstruck into like how am I gonna make the audience feel what these characters are feeling when they're interacting with each other just through the words that they're saying.
Yeah, like there's a really interesting, compelling story, through and through. You look past, the I don't know, you take off the rose-colored glasses of like, oh my God, it's Cher and it's Olympia Dukakis doing these amazing things, and it's Nick Cage in one of his earlier roles, and isn't he silly? Isn't he crazy over the top? Like there's a lot of really interesting things at play. So, if you were to take like a real life look of like a cross section of, a real Italian American family, deep knit in the community, and all of these, character misgivings and things like that that are going on. Like that would be really interesting to look at.
Yeah, there's several moments in this film where I think it really succeeds and it makes me love it in the way that it makes this family feel very lived in. Like this seems like a realistic family. Like forget the Nick Cage of it all for a second. Like Cher being a product of these two people, like Loretta being a product of her mother and her father, them living in this household that is like very like subtly decorated and art designed and stuff to feel like very lived in and very normal. But I think what people love about this movie tends to be like the little moments. So like people talk about like the moment in the kitchen when you first see the mom kind of like making the egg in the little piece of bread, and then the moment with like Cher kicking a can down the street. It's kind of these little moments of silence when Cher just kind of puts the radio on and just sits with a glass of wine for a second.
Yeah.
It feels, these characters feel very, I mean, we can't say realistic because this movie is insane, but like these characters feel very related to each other and very comfortable with each other.
The phrase you said of lived in is totally apt. I'd love the casting of Olympia Dukakis opposite of Cher. They look like they could 100% be mother-daughter.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, just character-wise, just seeing like how her father is, the interaction when she first comes home and she opens the wine or champagne or whatever it is, and she's telling him that she's going to get married. You know, that's a really great scene too. And you can kind of see, you know, where she gets some of her cynicism and a lot of her history. It's really great. I love that dynamic. But yeah, lived in, I think, is the key phrase there. And yeah, that's something I didn't think about. You know, like the set decoration, the house decoration. It feels, you know, real. It feels, you know, it's believable.
Yeah. I mean, one of the notes I had is like this. There's so many things that are just like refreshing about this movie and its screenplay in particular, mainly in the ways that like these people, this family, they're so. I mean, it's a movie about cheaters, kind of, but like they're so like blunt and kind of honest in their speaking that it's refreshing to see people voice their passions so clearly, like, and voice what they're thinking. So like you have like moments between Loretta and Rose where Rose is like, do you love her? And Cher just like immediately is like, no, I don't love him at all. Like I like him and that's good enough. And the mom's like, okay, that's great. And then at the very end, like, do you love him? Yeah, Ma, I love him awful. Oh God. And there's just like, there's a refreshing feeling with that, like, blunt talking, and with that with seeing people just acting on their passion. And maybe like I'm coming from my own personal life with that, where it's like you kind of wish you could talk like that, and you could just kind of like walk around the streets of New York and just like, you know, fall in love with the first brother-in-law that you see.
Man, like pairing. Okay, so two things here. Looking at Johnny and Ronnie next to each other, they do not look like brothers at all.
No.
Not at all. And then also the throwaway line of, Johnny, you're 42. That man is 6 years older than I am?
It's insane.
Is that what I'm going to look like in 6 years? Like, God, I hope not.
We got to have a second to talk about the ages in this movie. So of the actors, Cher is about 40 when filming this.
Whoa.
Nicolas Cage is, I think, like 22. Kind of insane. Olympia Dukakis is maybe like 10 to 12 years older than Cher in this. Vincent Gardenia is probably pretty older. He's like 15 or 20 years older than Olympia Dukakis, actually.
Yeah.
And then Danny Aiello, who plays Johnny, is actually closer to Olympia Dukakis' age than Cher is. So all over the place.
All over the place.
But I mean, somehow you make it work, and then we talking in 2023 just chalk it up to like, oh, it was the 80s. People looked different back then.
It was the 80s, lead poisoning.
40 meant something way different back then.
Man, like there's a great whole down TikTok of looking at why don't millennials look the age that they do comparatively to other generations. It's hilarious. Check it out. It's really great. But hey, real quick, I just saw you take a sip. I'm gonna take a sip too. We're both drinking something red. Joe, are we on a streak? Are we on a moon streak?
So we were on a green streak. Now we're on a red streak. Did you also go in the direction of a Cosmopolitan?
No, not really.
Tell me what you got.
This is something that I'm calling a love bite on the neck.
Oh.
This is gin, cranberry, lemon, and grenadine, and it is delicious. And then I cut a strawberry into the shape of a heart because this movie's all about love, you know? This movie's about love.
So I also had a dried or freeze-dried strawberry that was kind of clipped onto my drink, but it fell off. This is a Cosmos Moonpolitan. And it's the exact same recipe as a Cosmopolitan, which is vodka, Cointreau, lime juice, cranberry juice, and we added like a crushed strawberry sugar situation on the rim.
Delightful.
It's very sweet. I didn't know what a Cosmopolitan was until today.
And you're a fan. Mm-hmm. Yes. Could you just drink Cosmos like all day in the city?
Yes.
Yes.
Like smoke my Lucky Stripes or whatever.
Lucky Stripes. Yep. Yeah. It's not Lucky Strikes at all. Nope. Moon Stripes.
You can tell I smoke a lot.
I also love that Jonathan is getting involved, but only just barely. by helping out with the cocktails.
Anytime I have something on the rim, he has been involved because I don't know how to do that correctly.
You got to dip it in the liquid a little bit and then kind of just like frost it around.
Yeah,
It's
already-
a
already
delicate
work for me.
delicate skill.
God, what else is there to talk about with Moonstruck? This movie is very iconic in the queer community, but also just the community at large, the share of it all, the passion of it all, the love of it all. We could have watched this movie for like any
For
number
February.
of our previous miniseries. Like you kind of wish this movie was a musical in a way.
That would be very interesting. Like talking about the music, I already talked about That's Amore and Musetta's Waltz. Like those are the only two things that I remember playing over and over and over again throughout the movie.
It
I was
relies very much on more like classical pieces because it's the story is talking about these like classic feelings that people have. It's not more of like an 80s, pop sensation film like Working Girl would be.
Yeah.
It's more of just like this is a classic love story dealing with, themes that have haunted humanity as long as the moon has been out.
I mean, that's it. That's why, right? Like looking at a contemporary movie that we've talked about before, akin to this one, coming about the same time, When Harry Met Sally, was more progressive. It's still about love and, when two people fall in love and that kind of stuff. And, that kind of leans more into a little bit more of a, I don't know, specific personal kind of thing. This one is a little bit more bigger, right? It's the nuclear family, it's the community all at play. But yeah, that one feels more progressive in a sense. This one feels a little bit more timeless because you brought up before, this movie feels a little bit out of space, out of time. It's kind of timeless in a way, right?
Yeah, because like when Harry Met Sally, they're at like a sharper image at one point.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, it feels weird when you see a baseball game on the bar TV. Like it feels like it's out of place in the movie.
Yeah, because I remember, Ryan mentioned, she's like, is this in New York? Are we in Italy? Are we supposed to be, when even is this movie? And because it's on purpose, right?
Yeah, I think that's the intention of the film. It's kind of a coming together of the old world of Europe and the new world of America, and like how these characters kind of live at that intersection. And so it does really feel of two times in that way, and you get lost in what time period you're really in, and so the moments when like technology of the late 80s does come into play feel kind of disjointed.
Yeah, like she didn't pull out like an 8-track or something like that, or a CD or something like that was just cutting edge at the late 80s, that kind of thing. It feels just very normal, that kind of thing. So I love you brought up the old world and the new world, because I'm sure that's common in a lot of these European coming over to New York, any other place in America, that kind of thing, like the very central nuclear family all living together. It's normal. It's not out of the scope of something like that to happen.
Yeah, she's in her late 30s living with her parents after her first husband gets hit by a bus.
Yeah, and her dad's dad lives with them, and he has 100 dogs, and it's like no one bats an eye.
They have a house that's basically like the corner of the block entirely.
Yeah, I wonder what that place would go for nowadays. Like it would make your brain hurt.
$2 billion.
2.1 billion. Yeah,
a steal.
In this economy, yes, of course. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be said. And so you coming from a Catholic background, the Catholic touches, I'm sure, are also just welcome. Feels right at home.
I had a note where it's like it's not necessarily from like a religious Catholic standpoint, from more of like a cultural Catholic standpoint.
Yeah,
like
familial.
This movie reminds me of church and the people who went to church when I was younger. Like this movie feels like I lived in that time for half a second.
Yeah.
The times when they go to church and the mom's like, your father's having an affair. Like I recognize that type of church. I recognize the type of home that they live in, where it's like very much like, the pictures on the wall of the family. It feels very connected to family, connected to the old world. It's not, overly decorated in any way. It's kind of like it's got like a brown and red color scheme. It's
It's utilitarian. Yeah.
It's deeply Catholic in a way.
Yeah, and yeah, Mother Dukakis just making just a gallon of coffee in the morning for anybody who wants to come in off the street, and then a vat of oatmeal
God,
just for everybody. Like,
don't you want that kitchen?
I know, right? So like, and that's another thing that I kind of, I bet if they were to redo this movie, which again is sacrilege and I can go straight to hell, I'll see myself out.
Yeah.
Taking more of a love story approach to the food, I think would have been an interesting touch as well. Not to say everything needs to be awash with spaghetti and linguine and whatever, but like just show the family cooking a meal, and like it's just a place setting. Everyone's chopping something, everybody's doing something, but they're still having these meaningful conversations of like, I think your father's cheating on me. I don't know. Like that could be great. And I kind of wish they would have leaned more into that.
Like a Nancy Myers or a Nora Ephron does Moonstruck a little bit. Yeah.
Should we write a letter to Hollywood right now and CC all of the people we've mentioned? Diablo Cody, Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah. I think they've all kind of had it in the back of their mind, and this is really kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. They're like, we have the UCU endorsement. It's time to go. We got to jump on this.
Do you guys see how many listeners they have? 35.
Get it before Korea gets a hold of it,
Can you imagine? I don't want to. I don't want to live in that world.
We bring most of Brussels with us.
They stand strong behind us. We love Brussels.
I texted you while I was watching this. I couldn't help but just kind of write down so many of the lines from this movie.
They're
that
bonkers.
were my favorite. The moments from this movie, you kind of just want to live within every scene that happens. I mean, like from the first scene where they're at the restaurant and they have the whole back and forth around how a guy should propose, and she's talking about like bad luck, and like you got to get down on your knee, and your pinky ring will work fine. And again, like there's a refreshing nature to it, to how like she doesn't give a shit if it's a pinky ring. She doesn't care that like people are watching them. She's like, yeah, get down on your knee. She kind of knows what she wants in this situation.
Yeah.
The professor guy like looking over at them because he's kind of secretly in the background in all of this, getting dumped for the first time.
Yeah.
Is that man praying? When they get to the airport because he has to go to Sicily to see his mom, or Italy, somewhere in Italy. Cher kind of walks over to an old woman who's like, I put a curse on that plane. My sister is on that plane.
And then she goes, I don't believe in curses. And she goes, yeah, me neither.
It's so funny.
Yeah, the whole backstory. I want a prequel with that lady and
Moonstruck, the early years.
Mm-hmm.
Them waking up the mom, and the first thing she says is, "Who's dead?" You love him, Loretta? No, good. This whole movie is a comedy about how love can be dangerous. Let me see. We could write essays about the Nicolas Cage introduction scene, but the fact that they add in the Chrissy character, who is like the counter lady who's secretly in love with him, and then you never see him again.
Ever again.
Chrissy, bring me the big knife.
You texted that to me, and I lost it.
He is an opera character. He is doing the most. He is the definition of melodrama, and he can swing back and forth. What I would want to know is, does their marriage even happen after this movie ends, and how long do they last? I don't think they last very long.
I want the sequel, the 50, however old this movie is, 30, it's the same age as me, 36-year-old sequel of like, let's catch up with them now. What happened? Moonstruck 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Moonstruck, here we go again.
I want to see what happens. Yeah, like... And I touched on this before. Like, so Nick Cage has a fucking wooden hand.
I lost my wife. I lost my hand.
It's used as just like a tiny plot device and then never brought up again. He wears a glove. So like, I want to know, like, was this his choice? Was this written in the script, like explicitly, like this is why the brothers don't talk to each other, because he accidentally got his hand cut off in a bread slicer?
I love, there's like a small kind of connection that happens where she goes to a liquor store in one of the first scenes, and the wife of the guy at the counter is kind of arguing with him, telling him that he's a wolf, and he's like, you've never met a wolf. Cher's kind of smiling at their back and forth. later she's having a steak with Ronnie. And he's talking about his hand, and she's like, "You're a wolf who chewed off your own leg to get out of that relationship." And she's like, she's kind of cursed to see to the soul of everyone that she meets.
Yeah.
Like she reads him to death immediately.
Oh,
And
that's so
then
funny. She makes him a steak, and he's like, "I only ate him well done." And she's
my
like, "It's you're gonna eat it bloody, and you're gonna like it." And he's like,
No,
it's
the exact line that she says, which I wrote in all caps in my notes, is, "You'll eat this one bloody to feed your blood." Incredible.
Who talks like that?
Justin, when I tell you that this movie is such a good time, you have like the cute little scene with like the aunt and the uncle. He's got like Cosmo's moon. He tells the story of when like Cosmo was first courting Rose, and kind of that's what kind of gives you an idea that like Cosmo and Rose weren't estranged like this all the time, and they have love that they can gain back. Him and the aunt are kind of sweet together when they have that moment in the moonlight.
She says, "In this light, you look like you're 25." And he's like,
That's so sweet.
I know I do.
Then they get it on.
She doesn't want anything to do with him.
Obviously, you got snap out of it. You have a makeover scene. There's a moment when they meet each other at the opera, and he's like, "Your hair," and then the way she says, "Yeah, I had it done," so perfect. Like such a perfect line reading of that makes it so memorable. And then one of the things that he says when he's trying to convince her to sleep with him again is like, "Playing it safe, just about the most dangerous thing a woman like you could do." I mean, I'd fuck Nick Cage after that.
The screenwriter writing that is just like, yeah, flames
Like,
coming off the page.
I'm done for the day.
Like,
We did it.
Whew, I need a cigarette. Like that. That's a good line.
And then we end on that last scene in the kitchen, which I wanna watch for the rest of my life. I think just more and more people coming in, and them just like literally throwing it all out on the table. Everyone's here.
It's
Let's
great.
go.
Just like, who's at the door now? It's
And
great.
the mom and the dad kind of have a sweet moment that takes you a little bit down to reality, where she's like, "You know, we know that we still love each other, but I need you to end this. And I've been with you your whole life. Like, get a grip on yourself. You haven't been like running away from something your whole life. You are going to die eventually. You better want to be with me, who's kind of been loyal to you." She's not taking any shit from him, which is kind of awesome.
It's great. She puts her foot down and slams it on the table and just says, "Fucking grow up."
And then they fucking move on. And everyone's kind of great. And Cher's just kind of like rolling her eyes at it. Like, this is something that happens every Tuesday, you know?
Like, yeah, mom and dad classic. Yeah, if I'm ever gonna go out for small theater for a role, I'm gonna do the Nick Cage monologue when we first meet him. You know, like they say bread is life. You know, that whole thing is just ridiculous.
And so I make bread every day.
It's just so insane.
Chrissy, over by the wall. Bring me the big knife.
Yeah.
No, Johnny, I won't do it.
I'm gonna
nowhere.
do all the characters, very Michael Scott-esque. Yeah.
Chrissy, bring me the big knife.
Leave nothing but the skin on my bones. And then I love two things: you and the opera.
And the opera. You come to the opera for me.
Like, I want to know, like, when rounding out the character of Ronnie, who is obviously, yes, the exact mirror opposite of Johnny, who's a goofball, like the gag that he keeps leaving his luggage everywhere. Like,
It's just a dry sock.
this guy sucks. And Johnny is the exact opposite. He got all the brain cells and the oxygen. In
You
the
are a
room.
son who doesn't love his mother.
You're 42. Like, it's insane. He, you know, when writing out that character, like, these are the truths. Ronnie loathes his brother Johnny because he made him lose his hand, and now he has a wooden hand, but he loves the opera, and he works at a bakery, and he slings coal into this giant coal oven. Like, is that how you...
Again, like, what time period is this?
It's like, why did they get like one of the steam engines off of the Titanic to bake the bread? Like, is that how it works?
And so I make bread.
It's insane.
We
It's
got to
just-
do justice to these names. So you have the Castarinis, you have the Camararis, who's Ronnie and Johnny, and then you have Rita and Raymond Capomaggi, who is the aunt and uncle, so Rose's brother and his wife. So great. You just want to live in it. You want to slurp it up like a noodle.
like if I myself were Italian American, I would love the representation, the realness of the movie, that kind of thing. So like I can appreciate it for what it is, for that, because it's something you rarely see. Most of the time when you, and I brought this up at the top, most of the time you think of an Italian American movie or something, like there's some tie to the mafia or the mob or something like that, and it gets very tired, very boring a lot of the time. But this one just is just about just a community, a family,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and they're very Catholic, and they're just they're just living their lives under the moon.
They're Catholic in a way that's so cultural to that, which is so Catholic. Like they don't necessarily like invoke God or she goes to confession. It's so funny when she kind of tries to like sneak in the fact that she slept with Nick Cage in between two other smaller sins.
Yeah. Oh, I have that one written down. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's not a sin. But what was that second thing you said? I took the Lord's name in vain. I'm sleeping with some other guy, and
But,
I
like-
bounced a check at the liquor store. He's like,
know,
yeah,
like-
that one's not a sin.
The superstition within the family, the belief in like higher forces, regardless of what they are, so Catholic in that way. Okay, well that kind of rounds off my notes. Any last notes before we get into maybe the most insane game I've come up with yet?
Oh boy. Yeah, same. The intro that I did is off the wall.
I'm kind of afraid of where we are headed as a podcast if we keep on this track.
I mean, it's the left hand driving the right foot or something, like whatever the phrase is. It's just we're just flying by the seat of our pants. This movie was unexpected, out of left field.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect, but I mean, I can appreciate it for what it is. Olympia Dukakis definitely deserved that award.
You think MVP?
100% she's MVP. I mean, but obviously, Cher does what Cher does, and she does it flawlessly.
Cher's got an acting Oscar, baby.
I know. Like,
Oh yeah.
what are you going to do? Take it from her? You can try.
No.
But yeah, this movie was fun. I'm so glad that we pivoted to this one just like on a whim. That's not to say that, like Lady Bird wouldn't have been a good discussion, a good episode, but this one was just fucking wacky.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm glad. We'll cover Lady Bird at some point, but this was kind of maybe the best way we could have covered Moonstruck, I think, is from the vantage point of these acting performances and this screenplay.
Yeah, and it's really cool that like it's turning out this way because we're about to enter May, and we're gonna do Muppet Mayhem and talk about Muppet movies, and then in June, if we play our cards right, Joe, we can do 3 episodes in June if we want to. June is one of those months where you get like 6 weeks,
Oh yeah.
so we could do a bunch, and
We can do a little bonus thing.
we could do a little bonus in there if we want, but like we're gonna do all like Pride centric movies.
Yeah, we've talked about doing like little mini-sodes that are maybe like 45 minutes, like
Yeah.
where we just kind of cover smaller things that maybe aren't associated with like the broader miniseries that we're doing. Let's explore the
ruminate.
space there.
ruminate.
Let's see what space we have, and we can get into it.
Yeah. So, are you ready for this this fucking craziness?
I have so much written down that I have to get through. But then, yeah. So give me the intro. So it's game time. Here on the podcast, we typically play a game at the end of every episode, and Justin and I alternate making up a game based off of the movie that we are talking about. And Justin started to create more and more insane introductions that are really works of art that we'll be posting separately on social media, so you can watch it there if you're just listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm living for the challenge of it all.
Yeah.
This one I was really excited because I was like, "Ooh, I get to do a Cher song." Turns out doing a Cher song is really hard. So it kind of goes off the wall, and I lean into the technology of the time. but we'll just go into it, and then I'll talk about it a little bit later, and then we'll get into the game.
Set it up.
If I could have revenge, baby, it's all for you. I would find no words that could hurt you. If I could give you scars, I'd rub salt in them too. Then you'd loathe me like I loathe you too. If I could have revenge.
Yay!
Okay, perfect. I'm going to jump right into it then. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Give me.
Okay. In 1987, the full moon caused havoc in the streets of New York. Women slept with their fiancés' brothers. Decade-long marriages were nearly torn apart. Old men howled in the night with their dogs. It was a time of passion and chaos, all under the watchful, hypnotic gaze of a giant, evil, glowing orb in the sky. This year, it's time for the moon to pay for its crimes. This is Moonstruck 2, Cher's Revenge.
Oh my God.
You play as Oscar winner and pop music sensation Cher, and you are on a mission in space to destroy the moon so that it can no longer drive the people of Earth to madness. Accompanying you on your ship, Star Trek style, is the entire main cast of the movie Moonstruck. Nicolas Cage, Vincent Gardenia, Olympia Dukakis, and Danny Aiello.
Great.
Attached to your rocket ship is a payload of TNT that will blow the moon right out of the sky. But the moon is cunning. It has set up a series of 5 shields between itself and Earth as a defensive mechanism, which can each only be unlocked with a password.
Oh God.
The only clues that you and your team are given to unlock each shield are a single line from an Oscar-winning screenplay, and 3 options for which movie the line is from. This all makes sense because everyone knows that the moon is a huge Oscar nerd. Guessing each film correctly will open the shield and let you pass through without the moon noticing. But beware. Any wrong guesses and the moon may attack.
Oh no.
Are you ready to play
I'm ready.
Moonstruck 2, Cher's Revenge?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. You approach the first shield in your ship with your crew and receive a message on the comms requesting the password. Your clue is the following line. By the way, I would have voted for Obama for a 3rd term if I could. Best president in my lifetime, hands down. Is that line from Promising Young Woman?
It's from Get Out.
Get Out. Juno.
It's from Get Out.
You got it.
That's
Okay.
a good line. That's a good line.
With a light hiss, the shield disintegrates and your ship passes through. You approach the second shield. Your clue is the following line. All I wanted was to sing to God. He gave me that longing and then made me mute. Is that line from Amadeus, Dead Poets Society, or The Piano?
Not The Pianist?
The Piano.
The Piano? Probably The Piano. I don't think it's from Amadeus or Dead Poets Society, so I think it's from The Piano.
Your final guess is The Piano.
Mm-hmm.
Upon entering the wrong code, the shield glows red and a laser fires at your ship straight from the moon. In the ensuing chaos, Danny Aiello is sucked out into space.
Oh no, Danny Aiello, no!
A voice from the moon comes over the intercom, taunting you. Bet you wish you could turn back time now, Cher. Once you finally fix the damage to the ship, you realize that the laser actually caused the shield to go down briefly, and you proceed forward.
Excellent.
Correct answer was Amadeus.
Was he mute? I thought he was just deaf.
Nope. They're talking in metaphor. That's also Beethoven that you're talking about. You approach the third shield. Your clue is the following line. I wish I knew how to quit you. Your options are Moonlight, Brokeback Mountain, or Goodwill Hunting.
It's Brokeback Mountain.
After a slight pause, the shield goes down and you continue forward.
All right. I'm more than halfway in. I'm in there.
You approach the fourth shield. Your clue is the following line. You have exactly 10 seconds to change that look of disgusting pity into one of enormous respect. Your options are Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Producers, and Patton.
I'm going to say it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Upon entering the wrong code, the shield glows red, and a laser fires at your ship straight from the moon. Olympia Dukakis' lightning-fast reflexes steer the ship out of the path of destruction, but the strain of it causes her to pass out from exhaustion. You don't know if she'll make it. The moon taunts you again over the intercom. Mamma mia, there she goes again, it says. You ignore it, determined to press forward through the damaged shield.
All right. Last shield. Here we go.
You approach the final shield. Your clue is the following line. Molly, you in danger, girl. Is that from Ghost, Crash, or Precious, based on the novel Push by Sapphire?
It's Ghost. Fuck you, Moon.
Finally, you break through the moon's last line of defense. Finally, you break through the moon's last line of defense. Taking aim at the immortal space beacon of madness, you utter, snap out of it, and fire. A massive amount of explosives breach the moon's orbit and vaporize it like the Death Star upon impact, all while screams of rage echo throughout deep space. The scourge of the Earth has been vanquished, and you return to your home planet as heroes. The cast of Moonstruck has done it again. Everyone gets honorary Oscars.
For killing the moon? That's amazing.
Join us next time for Moon 3 Resurrection.
Oh, no. What happens to the tides? But amazing.
We'll never know, and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The points are made up. None of this matters.
I had 5 success scripts written down based on if you got all 5 correct, and more importantly, I had 5 failure scripts written down based on if you lost all of them, which ends with Cher dying. No. So I will send those to you separately.
Oh my God. Okay. Oh yeah, we should probably take down the game that we posted, and we'll post that one. We'll post that one because that's fun. How about that? Fuck you, Moon. I want to see what the the fallout is on the ground now that everyone's normal.
Well, we'll have to find out when we get that Moonstruck reunion going, right?
Yes, we'll do it. We'll write to Cher after this. As soon as we're done, as soon as we hang up, we're gonna call Cher.
Hey, Cher, got something for you.
Hey, Cher. Cher.
Cher.
Oh, that's good. Joe, this was fun. As always, this is such a fun time. Showing me things that I, wouldn't normally go out of my way to go watch. But now I know more about it, and I feel like if myself or Ryan are in a room ever with RuPaul for some reason, we can carry on a conversation and be like, "Hey, we've seen Moonstruck. Snap out of it."
Justin, that is why we do this podcast.
That is why we do it.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on next episode with Muppet Mayhem.
Again, ever committed to the bit. We're going to go watch this next movie that we're going to talk about in May in person.
In person.
So that means our next episode isn't going to be until the second week of May. But that's fine because fuck it. Who cares? So what Joe and I are going to do, we're going to go down to Midtown Atlanta, and we're going to go to the Center for Puppetry Arts, and we're going to go watch Labyrinth, starring Jennifer Connelly and David fucking Bowie.
And David Bowie's Bulge, from what I hear.
Yes, also co-starring The Bulge. And it's going to be amazing. So yeah, we're watching that in person on like the 6th, I think, of May. Nursing our tequila hangovers from the day prior. But yeah, that's the next one that we're going to talk about. And that's my movie that I have seen a bunch and Joe hasn't ever. And it's super fun because it's a Jim Henson joint. And then Joe's movie is going to be...
Don't tell him.
Oh, okay. Is a movie that I haven't seen. So, and it's Muppet related. So your guess is as good as ours.
There's quite a few options there.
There's quite a few. There's a bunch. It's so much fun. It's gonna be great. But yeah, that's what's coming up in the month of May. And
I'm very excited.
It's gonna be great. I get to do Muppet songs, and it's gonna be great. How fun.
Well, so great, Justin. I'm so glad I got to show you Moonstruck. And I'm so glad we are up to, what is this, episode 16 of our podcast?
16. We're coming up on the edge at the end of like season 1. I don't know how people do seasons for podcasts, because like, how does that even... I think we're just going to go just by year.
Yeah, we can call it a year.
So I think in like August, I think, is when we started, technically. So season 2 in August, coming at you hot.
Yeah, the season 1 DVD box set will be out in like September-ish. We just got to get like the art finished and stuff.
But yeah, pre-orders go live on our non-existing Patreon tomorrow.
Yeah. Use code Cher for 100% off.
She gets a cut. That's why we have to use that code.
She's sponsoring all of this.
She runs the whole shop. Anyway, cool. Joe, thanks. This was amazing. We'll catch you all next time on the UCU.
Bye.
Bye.